Welcome back to Arabic in Lockdown with Mr. Hana. Welcome back. We are on our 5th lesson now, so lesson 5. Thank you all for tuning in, for making an effort during this lockdown to try something new, to learn something new. Keep doing it. Thank you very much for the support. Keep liking, subscribing and sharing with friends and family. Before we begin today, I would just like to say Ramadan Mubarak to all our Muslim friends out there, anyone else who's celebrating Ramadan or observing Ramadan and the fast. I hope it's going good for you guys. I hope you're not getting too hungry or too thirsty. But yeah, a big shout out to everyone. Okay, so today's lesson, we're looking at 4 new letters. The first 2 are right opposite you. So we're looking at the letters Sad and Dad. Again, if you recall from previous lessons that we've done, some letters will be quite similar, the same as Ra and Zain, and the same as Sin and Shin, Del and Dhal. There's a couple in the Arabic alphabet which are quite similar in shape, but not necessarily in pronunciation. So, we begin, we look at the 2 top lines over here, so that we can focus a little bit more on the actual sound of the letter. So, for the letter Sad, it sounds as if it's an S, but why I put heavy S over there, the reason for that is because the sound is different. So if you listen closely to how I pronounce it, that might help you differentiate between the S sound from Sin in the previous lesson and the Sad sound in this letter over here. So for the letter Sad, okay, for the letter Sad, it is Sa. So when we're writing it in the Arabic, well, when we're writing Arabic, it sounds like Sa. And then the actual letter is called Sad. Okay, so it's a heavy S. So as if you sort of blow up your mouth, so just blow up your cheeks a little bit and then pronounce it. So Sad, Sad. Okay, so for this letter, it's Sad. And for this letter, it's Dad. That's why I put a H over here, because we don't necessarily pronounce the H at the end, but it's got a bit of a H touch at the end. Okay, so we've got Sad and Dad. Okay, so the letters that we're looking at today, the first 2, again, we're going to look at 4 today because both of them are quite similar to each other. So for this first letter, Sad, second letter, Dad. Okay, now let's move on to underneath the black line and we look at the different intonations. So we've got the Fatha, we've got the Kasra, and we've got the Dhamma. So for the pronunciation of Sad and Dad with the Fatha, right over here, we've got the Fatha on top. If we can recall from previous lessons, it's a sort of A sounding touch that it gives the letter. So we've got Sa and Da. So let's say it again together. Sa and Da. Okay. Then with the Kasra over here, just underneath, the 2 lines underneath, we've got Si and Di. So Si and Di. It's not an S necessarily. The sound for Sad is not an S, it's a S. So instead of S, instead of a S, it's a So. It's a bit heavier S. So we've got Sa and Da with the Fatha. Then we've got Si and Di with the Kasra. And then for the Dhamma, we've got So and Do. So let's do them together again. For the Fatha, we've got Sa and Da. For the Kasra, we've got Si and Di. And for the Dhamma, we've got So and Do. Okay, so now we move on to our 2 new letters. So we're looking at 4 letters this lesson. We've already looked at Sad and Dad. Now we're going to look at Ta and Va. Okay, so let's look at the top part of this little whiteboard. It's a bit confusing when I'm writing a heavy T, another version of the D. But I'll explain it as we go through it. Okay, so if we start with Ta over here, okay, Ta. I'll use an example with sort of the English and the Spanish that most of us, well, at least in Gibraltar, normally speak. Outside of Gibraltar, any bilinguals watching this will probably understand this. So say, for example, you say table in English. So table is, you use a T on the table, but it's a bit of a sort of sharp T. So table. But in Spanish, well, in the Llanito dialect we use in Gibraltar, instead of saying mesa, you'd say tabla. So if you're saying tabla, or the very well-known game of tablita, that's the sound of this letter over here. Okay, so ta, ta. So instead of ta, instead of the T that we looked at in the first lesson, so the letter te, the letter ta sounds more like the T we use when we say tabla or tablita, which is the board game that we play in the south of Spain and in some different parts of the world. In Gibraltar, in south of Spain, there's quite a famous little board game called tablita. Anyways, so the first letter, ta, so a bit of a heavy T, ta, ta. Instead of t, it's ta. So it's like sort of clicking your tongue in a sense, ta, ta, allowing your tongue to click a little bit, maybe. So the same as you say tabla, instead of table, the letter sounds like that. So tabla is the correct way to pronounce this letter, sorry. And then the second letter we're going to look at today is the letter va. So it's another version of D. We've just looked at dad as another sort of heavy pronunciation of D, because in a previous lesson, we did the letter del, which is the sharper sounding D. Whereas this letter over here, compared to the previous letter dad, they do look quite similar in the sense that they've both got a dot on top of them. They've got a bit of the similar body shape when you're looking at this body shape. They don't have the tail, the same as dad, and they also have an extra stick over here, which is like a little antenna. So you can differentiate between these letters by looking at the different shapes that they have. So the ta and da have a little antenna. Sad and dad, which are the previous letters we looked at, do not have that antenna. So yeah, so the letter va has more of a thick sort of th sound to it. So the, as if you're saying the, it's va, va. Instead of an e at the end of the the for the or the, you're looking at a sort of heavier sound, but with an a at the end of it. So va. So these two letters are, again, we go back to the first one, ta, that sort of heavy sound on the T, and another version of the D, this one is va. So that's why I've put the TH in brackets there, because it sounds more like a TH at the start, va, va. Okay, so if we move on to look at the intonations for these two letters, so we look at the fatha, the kasra, and the dhamma, and instead of putting you through this whole thing with the fathatain, kasratain, and dhammatain, most of you, if you've joined us from lesson 1 all along, you sort of understand how it goes. So I'll skip from looking at the fatha, kasra, and dhamma for each and every one of these letters to creating that little table that we normally look at the end of the lesson for each and every one of them, not just for the fatha, kasra, and dhamma, but also for the fathatain, kasratain, and dhammatain. So yeah, with the fatha, we've got ta and dha, then we've got ti and the, and we've got to and tho. So we do it again together. Ta, dha, ti, the, to, and tho. So now we move on to the little tables we look at as a summary for our lesson, and in those tables I shall include the fathatain, kasratain, and dhammatain. Perfect. So we've got to our summary, the normal summary we do at the end of our lessons, and we'll start off by looking at the dhamma, kasra, and the fatha, and then for each of the 4 letters, and then we'll move on to the dhammatain, kasratain, and fathatain, which we skipped initially, but seeing as most of you will probably already have the hang of the intonations and how they make a letter sound, you should hopefully be ready directly for the summary. Okay, so let's start off with the letter sad. So remember the pronunciation, it's not the sharp S sound, it's more of a so, sad. Okay, so for sad, fatha, sa, si, and so. Then we've got the letter dad. Okay, so it's not, again, not a sharp D, it's more of a heavy sound to the D, so dad. And for the dad, we've got da, di, do, da, di, do. Same as we had sa, si, and so. Okay, so for the third letter, if we remember correctly, I used the example where we looked at how the word table sounds with a sharp T, and the word tabla in Spanish, or say for example, because mesa in Spanish is a table, but we'd say tabla in the Llanito dialect in Gibraltar sometimes. So a tabla or tablita, the game that I used the example of, it has a different sounding T, or different sort of T sound. So that's how this letter sounds, ta. Okay, so for the letter ta, we've got ta, ti, to. Let's say them again, ta, ti, to. And then we move on to the. So the one that sort of is another version of the D sound, but it has that TH sort of initial sound, if we can call it that. So the. So the letter the. So we've got the right here. We've got the, the. The. Okay. So one more time, all of them together. Sa, si, so. Da, di, do. Ta, ti, to. And the, the. Now we move on to dammatain, kasratain, and fathatain. For the double intonations, some of you might remember the sounds from previous lessons. I'd like to ask you to attempt maybe guessing them on a piece of paper next to you before actually going through them in this video, maybe as a way to test yourself, but we'll go through them together. So just a quick reminder, we looked at 4 letters today. We've looked at sad, dad, ta, and dha. Okay, and now we're going to look at the dammatain, kasratain, and fathatain, which are the double intonations, as many of you might already know from watching the other episodes in the series. Okay, so we'll start off with sad and then work our way down, and we'll end the lesson on this note. So for sad, we've got sun, sin, sun, dun, din, dun, tan, tin, ton, and dhan, dhin, dhun. Okay, we go through them together again, but let's just not forget that some letters will have similar structures, maybe, but keep your eye out for little dots, because they do differentiate letters like ta and dha, and sad and dad. Okay, and make sure to try as much as you can to actually practice drawing them out. Okay, we can maybe look at another lesson where we're practicing drawing out all the letters. I can draw them all out in one go, and we can learn that way, but that you could just leave some comments or message me privately and we can go through that. Okay, so let's go through them one more time before we end. So for the letter sad, we've got sun, sin, son, dun, din, dun, tan, tin, ton, and dhan, dhin, dhun for the letter dha. So today we've looked at sad, dad, ta, and dha. Okay, all of these letters can be joined from this side, okay, or from this side. Okay, so for all these 4 letters, unlike some of the letters we've previously looked at, like for example, ra, zain, del, and dhal. Okay, so those letters you can only join from here and can't join from this side. But for sad, dad, ta, and dha, we can join them from the right hand side as well as the left hand side when we're actually writing out letters. That brings us to a close of our 5th lesson. I'm so proud of every single one of you for attempting this. Thank you for supporting me as well in doing this. Lots of your comments and private messages are quite heartwarming, so I will continue. We've probably got about maybe 3 lessons max left of the Arabic alphabet. Once we finish the alphabet, we can begin at looking into phrases, greetings, different foods, different colors, different names, and then we can start adapting the knowledge we've gained of the actual alphabet into real Arabic. Thank you very much again. Take care, stay safe, and see you very soon.